It all started with a plastic cup. Just a cheap, crumpled soda cup that had probably rolled around the school hallway for hours. Nothing expensive, nothing dangerous, just trash. But that trash, that one careless act of disrespect, would unravel something deeper than anyone could have imagined. What seemed like just another immature prank from a bored teenager would soon turn into a revelation that would silence an entire school, shake up a family, and leave even the toughest kid questioning everything he thought he knew. This isn't just a story about discipline. This is about secrets, secrets buried deep in plain sight, hiding right under everyone's noses. And today, you're going to find out exactly what happened the moment a principal made one unexpected phone call that changed everything. Now, before you skip ahead or click away, let me ask you something real. Have you ever judged someone before knowing their full story? Be honest. Maybe it was someone who looked tired and grumpy. Maybe it was the quiet kid in class. Or maybe, just maybe, it was someone like the janitor at your school. We've all been there, right? Quick assumptions, snap judgments. But what if I told you that the person most people ignore could be hiding a story so powerful, so personal, it could make even the boldest teenager regret their actions? That's the truth we're diving into today. And you're not going to want to miss a second of it. Now listen, this isn't one of those over-the-top, made-up internet tales where everyone claps at the end. No. This is raw, real, and based on how things really unfold in the hallways of America's high schools. This is for every teacher who's been dismissed, every janitor who's been overlooked, every student who's been misjudged, and every parent who thinks they know what's really going on with their child. By the end of this video, you're going to get the answer you came for, but I promise, it's not the one you're expecting. Because the truth behind what happened in this school hallway isn't just shocking, it's emotional, it's uncomfortable, and it's going to make you question everything. So stay with me, because I'm about to take you deep into a story that will pull at your heart, twist your assumptions, and make you look at everyday people a little differently. I'm not just telling you what happened. I'm taking you there, right into the middle of it, into the sound of squeaky sneakers on polished floors, the sharp echoes of laughter that don't always feel funny, and the quiet resilience of someone who's been walked past too many times without even a second glance. This story, this one, is the reason you clicked. And if you're here right now, it's because something inside you wanted to know what really happened when a teenage boy threw garbage at a janitor, and the principal decided it was time to stop pretending everything was normal. Let me take you to Jefferson High School. It's your typical public high school in the US, fluorescent lights, faded lockers, vending machines that barely work, and that weird mix of burnt pizza and disinfectant smell in the cafeteria. You know the kind. The kind of place where students drag themselves through Monday mornings, where drama lives in every hallway corner, and where kids often forget that real people work behind the scenes to keep it all going. And that includes the janitor, Mr. Ramon Alvarez. Every morning at 5 a.m., long before the first bell, Mr. Alvarez was already mopping the floors, unclogging toilets, and wiping graffiti off walls that would just be tagged again by lunch. Most students didn't even know his name. They just called him the janitor and moved on with their day. But not Ethan. 16-year-old Ethan Blake had a different kind of reputation. Popular, loud, and always surrounded by a crew of boys who thought they ran the place. The kind of kid who spoke when he wasn't supposed to and stayed quiet when it mattered. On the surface, Ethan looked like every other high school junior. Graphic hoodie, scuffed sneakers, and a phone always in his hand. But inside, that's where the chaos lived. And on one ordinary Tuesday, with the hall buzzing and students rushing to second period, Ethan decided to make a scene. He crumpled up his empty soda cup, locked eyes with his buddies, and with a smirk that screamed arrogance, he launched it across the hallway, straight at Mr. Alvarez, who was quietly cleaning up a spilled bag of chips near the lockers. The cup hit Mr. Alvarez on the shoulder. He didn't flinch. He just paused, stood still for a second, then slowly picked it up and dropped it into his trash bin. No words, no eye contact, just silence. And that silence hit harder than any punishment. Because in that moment, it wasn't just about the trash. It was about the years of being treated like one. Now here's where things shift. You see, most schools might have just brushed it off. Maybe a detention, maybe a half-hearted apology. But not this time. Principal Carson had been watching. And he didn't just see a cup being thrown. He saw something he couldn't ignore. That afternoon, instead of calling Ethan to the office and giving him the usual lecture, Principal Carson picked up the phone and made a different kind of call. He dialed a number that hadn't been used in months. He called Ethan's parents. And what he told them left them frozen, completely stunned. Because the janitor their son had just disrespected, he wasn't just any janitor. He was something else entirely. Something that no one, especially Ethan, could have seen coming. But before we get there, before I tell you what the principal revealed to Ethan's parents, before you hear the truth that turned a hallway prank into something unforgettable, let's rewind. Let's go back a few years. Because to understand what happened that day and why it hit so hard, you need to know who Mr. Alvarez really was and why he chose to keep a secret that could have changed everything. And, trust me, you're going to want to hear this. 3 years before the cup incident, Ramon Alvarez was someone entirely different. Not the quiet janitor who swept floors without a word, but a respected name in the community, someone who had once held a very different kind of authority. Before his janitor uniform, before the mop and gloves, before the early mornings spent alone in the halls, he wore a different kind of badge. But no one at Jefferson High knew that, not even Principal Carson, at least not until recently. And that's where the mystery starts twisting. Because for someone to disappear so completely from their past, to change their identity and step into one of the most overlooked roles in the building, it had to be for a reason. And not just any reason, something serious enough that even he never spoke about it. No photos, no name tags, no LinkedIn. Just a man with tired eyes and a quiet way of moving through life like he was trying to stay invisible. And he almost did, until Ethan Blake threw a cup and lit the match that brought the whole thing back to the surface. Ethan didn't know any of that. To him, the janitor was just background noise. The truth is, Ethan was too wrapped up in his own world to notice anyone else's. Over the past 6 months, he'd been slipping, grades dropping, teachers complaining, tension building at home. His mom worked long hours as a nurse, barely home for dinner. His dad? Gone 3 years and counting. And Ethan, like a lot of teens trying to stay afloat in a place where reputations matter more than reality, found himself slowly becoming the kind of person who mocked others just to stay above water.
He didn't start out that way.
But life has a way of hardening people when no one's really watching. His closest friends, Drew, Marcus, and Tyler, were loud, cocky, and always on the edge of trouble. Together, they were the kind of group teachers dreaded and security watched out of the corner of their eye. Not because they were dangerous, but because they were careless. Careless with words, careless with people, and most of all, careless with those they saw as beneath them. But not everything about Ethan fit the mold. There were signs, small, subtle cracks in the mask he wore. Like the way he sometimes zoned out in class, staring too long at nothing. Or how he always walked a little slower past the memorial wall near the school library, where photos of fallen heroes from the local community hung in gold frames. His eyes would linger on one of them, a face that looked familiar, though he never talked about it. He didn't share much. Not with teachers, not even with his friends. Whatever was going on under the surface, Ethan made sure it stayed buried. Still, something had changed in the weeks leading up to the incident. He'd started acting out more, pushing boundaries harder, laughing louder, but with less joy, like someone trying to distract from something heavier. And while the soda cup moment looked spontaneous, maybe even harmless to some, there was something behind it. A flash of something in Ethan's eyes that Principal Carson had seen too many times before, pain trying to disguise itself as power. Principal Carson wasn't new to teenage behavior. He'd worked in schools for over 20 years. He could tell when a prank was just a prank and when it was a cry for attention. And this was different. That's why, instead of writing Ethan up and moving on, he decided to take a closer look. He started asking questions. He pulled Ethan's recent records, reviewed his disciplinary files, even checked in with the school counselor. And the more he dug, the more something didn't add up. Ethan wasn't just spiraling, he was circling something deeper. Something that no suspension or detention slip could fix. Then came the odd connection. It happened by accident, really. Principal Carson was reviewing school staff files for routine updates when he noticed something strange in Mr. Alvarez's file, or more accurately, what wasn't there. His background check cleared, but there were gaps. Missing years. A period of about 2.5 years with no official records, no listed employment, no certifications. Just nothing. Most people would overlook that. Not Carson. He made a few calls. Quiet ones. Off the record. And when the pieces started coming together, his hands actually shook. Because Mr. Ramon Alvarez wasn't just a janitor. He was someone else before all this, someone with a record of service. Someone with a past that didn't match the man pushing a mop down the hallway. And the real shock? His past intersected with Ethan's life in a way no one at Jefferson High could have predicted. What exactly was that connection? That's where the lines start to blur. Because as Principal Carson learned more, he also uncovered other oddities. Like this strange man who had been seen parked across from the school several times over the past month, always in a nondescript car, never leaving the driver's seat. Or the envelope that arrived at the school's front desk, no return address, just a printed photo of Ethan in the parking lot after football practice, with the words, "You don't know who you're dealing with." Security had chalked it up to a prank.
But now?
Carson wasn't so sure. At the same time, Ethan's mom had been getting anonymous texts, just one line each every few days. He needs to know the truth. She didn't recognize the number. When she tried calling it back, it was disconnected. And still, she said nothing to Ethan.
Not yet.
Meanwhile, Mr. Alvarez had become more distant than usual. He started avoiding students entirely, working only after hours, wearing a cap pulled low to cover his face. Something had rattled him. And though he hadn't changed anything in his routine, it was clear something was coming. Something that had been buried for years, and now, finally, was pushing its way to the surface. The question is, what secret could possibly connect a quiet janitor and a rebellious teen who never even looked him in the eye? What could cause a man to walk away from one life and hide in another? Why would someone target a high school student with cryptic messages and threats? And what does Ethan have to do with all of it? One thing is certain. The truth is out there. But the deeper you go, the more twisted it becomes. And just when you think you've figured it out, just when the clues seem to start making sense, a new piece enters the puzzle. A voice from the past. A face Ethan never expected to see again. And a truth that will leave everyone, Ethan, his mother, Principal Carson, even Mr. Alvarez, staring down a moment that none of them saw coming. The story is just beginning. Ethan didn't ask for any of this. All he knew was that the day after the soda incident, everything around him started feeling different. His locker was tampered with, someone had rifled through it, but nothing was taken. At least, nothing obvious. Just a faint smell of aftershave he didn't recognize, and his backpack moved slightly, unzipped like someone had been searching for something. Then, during biology class, a folded note slid across his desk. No name, no signature. Just one line scribbled in shaky handwriting. "He's not who you think he is. Stop asking questions." But the thing was, Ethan hadn't asked anyone anything, not yet. It was as if someone already knew he was going to. That's when the real paranoia began to set in. Suddenly, everyone felt like a suspect. And in a school full of familiar faces, that kind of suspicion spreads like wildfire. The following day, Principal Carson scheduled a meeting with Ethan's mom. But before she could even make it to campus, the school's main security server mysteriously went offline. Not for an hour. For an entire day. Every surveillance camera, hallway, parking lot, faculty entrance, black. The IT team claimed it was a software glitch during an update. But Carson had reviewed the schedule himself just days before. No update was planned. And just like that, the footage from the day of the soda incident was gone. The one video that might have shown who else was watching, who might have been pulling strings, or who was there the moment Ethan crossed the line. It had vanished. Ethan tried to move on like nothing was happening, but the pressure was building. Drew and Marcus had started acting strange, whispering when he wasn't around, cutting him off mid-sentence, brushing off things they would have laughed about just weeks ago. Then came the text from Tyler late at night, just one sentence. "Don't trust anyone, not even Carson." That was the breaking point. Because until that moment, Ethan thought the principal might have actually cared. But now, everything felt unstable. Every word, every glance, every silence became suspect. Still, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Mr. Alvarez. Not out of guilt, but out of instinct. There was something in the way the man looked at him after the cup hit the floor, just for a split second. A look Ethan had seen only once before. Years ago. In a photograph tucked away in a forgotten album in the back of his mom's closet. A picture of his father in uniform, standing next to someone who looked just like Mr. Alvarez. But younger. Different posture, different eyes. The resemblance was there, though, and now Ethan couldn't ignore it. But just as he was about to confront his mom and ask about the man in the photo, the album disappeared.
Gone.
He searched the closet top to bottom, dug through every dusty box and drawer, even checked the attic. Nothing. When he asked her about it, she froze.
Completely.
No reaction, just silence, followed by a cold, mechanical, "Maybe I threw it out." But she was lying. Ethan knew it. She looked afraid, like someone had warned her to. Whatever this secret was, it went deeper than he thought. Things escalated when a school staff member, Ms. Ellison, the front desk secretary who'd worked at Jefferson High for nearly a decade, suddenly took leave. No notice, no farewell email. Just disappeared. Rumor had it that she'd seen something on the security footage before it was wiped, something that didn't match the timeline the school was now repeating to the press. When Principal Carson was asked, he simply said, "Ms. Ellison is taking some personal time." But people whispered. And Ethan started wondering, was she silenced? Or did she leave on her own, scared of what she knew? Then there was the voicemail. Ethan's phone buzzed at 2:47 a.m. No caller ID, just a static-filled message that played for 11 seconds. In the background, muffled voices, two men arguing. One of them said Ethan's name. The other said, "We swore to keep this buried." And then it cut off. No trace. When Ethan tried to play it again, it was gone. Deleted from his inbox. Not backed up, not saved. Like it had never existed. But he knew what he heard. And now, nothing felt safe. Just as Ethan was preparing to confront Mr. Alvarez directly, he found the janitor's supply closet padlocked from the inside, something it had never been before. That same day, a student claimed they saw a strange man on campus during early hours, wearing a visitor badge that had been forged. Security brushed it off. But Principal Carson? He looked shaken. And for the first time, he avoided Ethan in the hallway. The man who once seemed invested in helping now crossed the corridor when he saw him. There was one last lead. Ethan remembered the name on the memorial wall that always caught his eye, Blake Thompson. He was a decorated Army veteran, one of the town's quiet heroes who had died overseas. But when Ethan looked up the full name, the documents linked him to a classified unit, one that Mr. Alvarez had also been rumored to serve in. Suddenly, the timelines began overlapping. The more Ethan searched, the more he realized this wasn't just about a janitor with a secret identity. This was about a cover-up that went far beyond the school walls. And just when Ethan thought he was making progress, when the picture started to take shape, he received a manila envelope in his locker. Inside, a single photo of his dad. Except this one had never been in the house. In the image, his father stood next to Mr. Alvarez. But what shook Ethan most wasn't their closeness. It was the man standing behind them, partially blurred, but unmistakably familiar. Principal Carson. And scrawled across the bottom of the photo, in thick red ink, 3 men. 1 lie. Don't be the 4th. The day after Ethan found the manila envelope, the school felt colder, like the walls themselves were whispering secrets. Word had spread that a lockdown drill was happening that week, but some students were saying it wasn't a drill at all. That someone had broken into the faculty lounge overnight, but nothing was taken. Just a folder left on the table, deliberately, with a sticky note stuck to the front. "Tell him the truth, or I will." Nobody claimed to know what it meant, and Principal Carson told staff not to mention it. But by second period, rumors were flying like wildfire across the school. Ethan kept his head down, clutching that photo tighter in his backpack, wondering who was sending these threats, and why. Then something unexpected happened that threw the whole situation into even murkier waters. Natalie, the quiet girl from Ethan's chemistry class who barely spoke to anyone, missed school for the first time all semester. At first, no one thought much of it. But Ethan did. Because the day before, she had been sitting alone near the back of the library when he passed by and noticed something strange. She was staring at a folder identical to the one he'd received. Same beige cover, same handwritten label in red ink. When their eyes met, she shut it fast and shoved it into her bag like it was something dangerous. Now she was gone without warning. No call to the office, no message from her parents. Just vanished. And by the end of the day, her locker had been emptied out. That wasn't the school's doing. Someone else had cleared it, silently, before anyone noticed. Except Ethan. Because he had been watching. He didn't sleep that night. He dug through old yearbooks, scanned local newspaper archives online, even checked the Jefferson High staff roster going back 10 years. What he found left his hands trembling. Natalie's last name wasn't common. He cross-referenced it with some older articles about community awards and military service records. Her uncle, Andrew Bellows, was a whistleblower from a defense unit that had worked with a now-defunct private contracting group linked to overseas interrogations and high-level intelligence work. And the man he testified against? Lieutenant Commander Thomas Alvarez. That couldn't be a coincidence.
Not now.
Not when Mr. Alvarez was working as a janitor under a fake name at Ethan's school. Not when Natalie suddenly disappeared without a trace. The next morning, Ethan tried to act normal, but everything was spiraling. He finally got the nerve to confront Principal Carson, cornering him outside the staff lot as he was unlocking his car. Ethan demanded answers, slapping the photo down on the hood of the vehicle. For a moment, Carson just stood there, frozen. Not surprised by the photo, but more like someone who had waited years for this moment to arrive. He didn't deny anything. Instead, he muttered something under his breath. It was supposed to stay buried. Then he looked around nervously and told Ethan to meet him at the old storage shed near the football field after school. Alone. No phones. No one follows you. Understand? Ethan nodded, but his heart was racing. Because now, whatever this was, it wasn't just connected to his father. It was tangled in something darker, something no one wanted to come out. But before he could make it to that meeting, another shockwave hit. Drew, his former best friend, showed up at Ethan's door just after sunset. Pale, shaking, and clearly terrified. In his hand, a flash drive. He said he found it stuffed inside one of the ceiling tiles in the gym locker room. No label. Just a single folder labeled Phase 2. Drew admitted he had been spying on Ethan, on Carson, even on Alvarez. He had been approached weeks ago by someone who offered him money to keep an eye on things and report back anything unusual. He didn't know who they were. The number they used always changed. The instructions were always anonymous. But then, 2 nights ago, someone tried to break into his house. Didn't take anything. Just left a single sentence carved into the wood of his bedroom door. "You're in too deep." That's when Drew realized he wasn't just playing a prank anymore. He was part of something huge. And he had no idea how to get out. Ethan and Drew plugged in the flash drive using a burner laptop Drew brought. He didn't trust using school or personal devices anymore. What they found was deeply unsettling. Surveillance photos, timestamps, partial transcripts of conversations. Most of them featured Mr. Alvarez, on school grounds, in the cafeteria, even walking home. But a few were of Ethan. Some were from weeks ago, long before the soda incident. And one was from inside his own house, taken through the window of his bedroom. The image was timestamped just 3 nights ago. Someone was watching them. Someone had been documenting everything. And then, just before the screen blacked out, the final file opened, a security clearance document with both Carson's and Alvarez's names listed under a covert operation from 17 years ago, one that had been wiped from all public records. But someone had a copy. And they had left a message beneath it. The janitor isn't hiding. He's protecting. The danger isn't him, it's coming. That night, Ethan couldn't stop the images from replaying in his head. The photo, the threats, the surveillance. Natalie's sudden disappearance. And now Drew's confession. Every piece of the puzzle he thought he was beginning to understand had just twisted again. The real enemy, if there was one, was still out there. Watching. Manipulating. Playing a game none of them even knew they were part of. And just as Ethan closed his laptop and turned off the light, his phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. One sentence. Meet me at locker 319. Midnight. Come alone. The same locker Natalie used before she vanished. The wind was different that night. Sharper, colder, whispering through the empty streets like it knew something no one else dared to speak. Ethan stared at the time glowing on his phone screen. 11:59 p.m. He was already standing near the edge of the school, hidden behind a row of dumpsters that reeked of spoiled milk and burnt pizza from the cafeteria. The school was closed, locked tight, every door chained, every hallway dark. Except one. A back entrance near the gym had been mysteriously left ajar, just slightly, barely enough for someone watching to notice, but enough for someone familiar with the place to slip through. Locker 319 was just 2 corridors away, and right now it felt like walking into a trap. Every step Ethan took echoed louder than it should have, even though he was trying to stay silent. The glow of the emergency lights flickered as if they too were anxious. He moved fast, heart pounding, sweat building along his spine. Locker 319 was Natalie's, and he hadn't stopped thinking about the last moment he saw her. How her eyes darted to the folder, how she vanished the very next day. That locker might hold answers, or it might be the final move in a game someone else was winning. When he finally reached it, the metal door of the locker creaked softly open, like it had been loosened on purpose. Inside, it was almost empty, except for a small spiral notebook taped to the back wall. No label. No name. Just 3 words scrawled across the front in thick black marker. Stop asking questions. Ethan didn't care. He yanked the notebook free, flipped it open, and started skimming. Pages and pages of handwritten entries. Natalie's handwriting, notes detailing people, places, and patterns that stretched back months. She had been documenting strange meetings, conversations that didn't fit, odd behaviors from teachers and janitors, and even Principal Carson himself. But what chilled him most was the final entry, dated 2 days before she disappeared. It read, "They're watching me now. I think they know I've figured it out. If anything happens to me, tell Ethan to look in the basement, behind the boiler." Suddenly, Ethan heard something. Footsteps. Not distant or accidental, close, measured, deliberate. He froze, trying to press himself into the shadows as best he could, stuffing the notebook under his hoodie. Then came the unmistakable sound of breathing. Not his own. Someone was nearby, just around the corner. He didn't wait to find out who. He ran. Sprinting down the corridor, he threw open the emergency exit and bolted into the night, barely registering the distant sound of a voice yelling after him. Not his name, just a cold, flat statement. "We warned you." He didn't stop running until he was halfway home, lungs burning, every car that passed feeling like it was slowing just a little too much, every flickering streetlight making him glance over his shoulder. When he finally reached his front porch, he fumbled for the key, got inside, slammed the door, and locked it behind him. But he wasn't alone. The silence in the house felt wrong. The lights were off, but his mother's car was in the driveway. He called out for her. No answer. He moved slowly through the hallway, whispering her name, trying to keep his voice steady. Then he found her phone, on the kitchen table, unlocked, with a single text message open on the screen. It was from an unknown number, and it said, "Your son doesn't understand what he's doing. Tell him to stop, or we'll stop him." There was no trace of her. No note. No sign of a struggle. Just a door left slightly open in the back, swaying in the wind. Panic ripped through him. Ethan collapsed into the chair, the notebook still pressed against his chest like a lifeline. What had he gotten them into? It wasn't about the janitor anymore. This was bigger, so much bigger. Someone was orchestrating something from the shadows, and now they weren't just threatening. They were acting, taking people, silencing them. And now, with his mom gone and no one left to trust, Ethan felt a suffocating pressure close in around him. He thought about going to the police, but what would he even say? That a missing girl had left him a coded message in a school locker? That a janitor had a secret military past and might be protecting something in the basement? That someone was stalking him and now his mom had vanished? They'd lock him up, or worse, shrug it off until it was too late.
He knew what he had to do next.
Natalie wanted him to look behind the boiler. That was the next move. But even as he made the decision, his phone vibrated again. This time, the message was different. Just a photo. A live snapshot of Ethan standing on his porch, taken just seconds ago. He staggered back, spinning in all directions, trying to spot the source. Nothing. No flash. No sound. Just darkness. Whoever was watching was close. And they wanted him to know it. The door to the school basement groaned as Ethan pulled it open, its hinges stiff with rust and time. The air below felt heavy, damp, and strangely still, as if the world itself paused to watch him descend those steps. With each footfall, the buzz of the outside world faded, replaced by the faint hum of old machinery and something far more unsettling, silence that felt intentional. The kind of silence that seemed manufactured to conceal something. Ethan clutched the flashlight tighter, the notebook burning against his chest like a pulse, and crept deeper into the shadows beneath the school. Natalie had written, "Behind the boiler." But now, nothing seemed certain. Every truth he thought he knew had started to crack, revealing layers of secrets buried beneath everyday life. His mom was gone. Natalie was missing. And someone out there had their eyes on him, sending pictures, tracking his every move, leaving just enough breadcrumbs to keep him moving. It all pointed here, this basement, this moment. As he rounded the final turn past the storage closets, the old industrial boiler loomed ahead, coated in grime and whispering with the quiet hiss of aging steam lines. Behind it, a maintenance panel had clearly been unscrewed. Someone had been here before him. Someone who wanted that space found, or wanted to frame it that way. He stepped closer, pulling the panel aside to reveal a crumbling wall, behind which lay a box wrapped in duct tape and newspaper clippings. Carefully, he pulled it out and dropped to his knees, cutting away the tape with a pocket knife. What he found inside wasn't just shocking, it shattered the entire narrative he'd been chasing. There, buried beneath the newspaper and dust, were photographs.
Dozens of them.
Some of Natalie, some of Ethan, but what chilled him to his core were the ones of his father. A man he barely remembered, who supposedly died in a car accident when Ethan was 7. But in these photos, his father wasn't just alive. He was in the school, in the janitor's office, speaking with Principal Carson, even sitting in what looked like a makeshift surveillance room filled with monitors. Ethan's breath caught. This couldn't be real. Every year of his life had been built around the belief that his dad was gone. And yet, here he was caught in snapshots that looked recent, maybe even taken within the last year. Then came the next wave of confusion. A VHS tape, labeled only with one word: experiment. Ethan didn't even know where he could play it, but the box had a photo of an old AV room from the school's defunct media department. He hadn't been in that wing since he was a kid. With no better lead, he grabbed everything and ran back upstairs, heart racing, mind spinning. None of this made sense anymore. If his dad was alive, why had he faked his death? What was the school hiding? And why had Natalie known about it? When he reached the AV room, he expected more darkness and dust, but instead, he found the lights on. Someone had already been there. The VHS player was set up, plugged in, and waiting. The room had that same sterile silence, the kind that warned him not to trust anything. He shoved the tape into the player, and the screen blinked to life. What played next took everything Ethan believed and tore it apart, piece by piece. The tape was grainy, but clear enough to make out faces. His dad, Principal Carson, the janitor, and his mother, sitting together in a room, discussing Ethan by name. Discussing his behavior, his progress, his reactions. The words Phase 2 and compliance study kept coming up. And then something far more disturbing. If the subject continues to react emotionally instead of rationally, his father's voice said, we may need to reset the environment. Introduce fear. Use familiar loss as a trigger. Ethan staggered back from the screen, his entire world collapsing under the weight of the truth. It hadn't been a mystery he stumbled into. It had been constructed. He wasn't uncovering a secret, he was the experiment. The threats, the vanishing people, the basement clues, it was all a test. A simulation. Controlled chaos designed to monitor how he responded under extreme emotional pressure. Every person he trusted had played a role. His mother, the principal, the janitor, even Natalie. But then, the tape cut to black, and another message appeared. This phase is now complete. Prepare for subject extraction. Before Ethan could even react, the lights in the room went out. The screen went dead. And in the distance, down the hallway, he heard the unmistakable sound of boots. More than one pair. Getting closer. Ethan's feet felt rooted to the floor, but his instincts screamed for him to move. The heavy thudding of boots echoed through the hallway, multiplying with each second, no longer just a sound but a countdown. His breath caught in his throat as he lunged for the door, dragging the evidence box under his arm and darting down the corridor, heart slamming against his ribs. The school, once familiar and full of late bells and student chatter, now felt like a trap, every flickering light, every shadowed corner a threat. He didn't know who was coming. He didn't even know who he was anymore. All he knew was that whatever this experiment was, it was bigger than anything he could have imagined, and it wasn't over. Not even close. He didn't make it far before a voice pierced the tension, stopping him cold.
Ethan.
Stop. It was calm, measured, familiar. He turned slowly, pulse thundering, and there she stood, his mother, dressed not in her usual jeans and cardigan, but in a lavish-hued blazer, with a security badge clipped to her chest. Her expression was unreadable, her eyes void of the softness he remembered from childhood. You weren't supposed to find this yet, she said, stepping forward, her heels clicking on the linoleum floor. You've accelerated the timeline, and now we don't have a choice. What does that even mean? Ethan choked, unable to comprehend the words coming from someone who once kissed him goodnight, who held his hand at the doctor's office, who sat through parent-teacher conferences and cried at his middle school graduation. You lied to me. My whole life is a lie. She didn't flinch. Instead, she nodded slowly, as if acknowledging the inevitable pain. You were chosen, Ethan. You always were. We didn't expect you to be this intuitive, this defiant. But everything we did was to prepare you for what's coming. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a sealed envelope. Inside is a key. You have until midnight to decide. If you come with me, you'll get answers. Safety. You'll be protected from what's coming next. But if you walk away, you're on your own. And the truth might destroy more than just you. Ethan stared at her, then at the envelope, mind spinning with betrayal, anger, confusion, and heartbreak. His entire body trembled, not from fear, but from the crushing weight of knowing. Knowing that the one person he thought he could turn to was part of the machinery that had turned his life into a scripted nightmare. And still he hesitated. Because some part of him still believed in the mother who held him during thunderstorms, who read him bedtime stories, who smiled during Sunday morning pancakes. But maybe that woman never existed. Or maybe she was just another actor in a grand, twisted production. He took the envelope without a word and bolted toward the school's rear exit, ignoring her calls. The sky outside had shifted to deep gray, clouds swirling like something apocalyptic. As he ran across the field, something inside him cracked wide open, not just from fear, but from a desperate need to reclaim his own narrative. The truth could be a weapon, but only if he had the strength to wield it. He knew they'd come after him. He knew time was running out. But in that moment, one thing became painfully clear. Whoever these people were, whatever they were trying to control, they had underestimated him. Standing at the far end, half hidden by the failing lights and crackling monitors, was Mr. Tanner, no longer masked by the gentle sarcasm and dry wit of a science teacher. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing faded military tattoos and scars Ethan had never noticed before. He looked like a man who'd spent years erasing who he used to be, and now, with the system unraveling, he didn't care to keep up the charade. You finally made it. Tanner said with a tired smile, typing rapidly into a terminal that looked far too advanced for any public school basement. I was hoping you'd stop running eventually, that you'd start asking real questions. Ethan took a step closer, the papers in his hand shaking. Why me? Why the lies? The experiments, the surveillance, the threats. What was the point of all of this? Tanner turned to face him fully. You weren't just part of the experiment, Ethan. You were the keystone. The one we built the others around. Everyone reacted to you, your defiance, your questions, your morality. We built psychological profiles off your decisions. Real-time analysis of how a community shifts when one person breaks the pattern. It wasn't just about control. It was about influence. And you, he paused, a smirk creeping across his face. You were the perfect chaos variable. Ethan's mind reeled. He remembered the strange coincidences, the people who vanished after a single conversation with him, the way certain adults always seemed to show up right after he'd discovered something. It had never been about uncovering the truth. They had wanted him to dig deeper, up to a point. You used everyone, Ethan whispered. Natalie, Caleb, even my mom. His voice cracked as the final realization hit him like a sledgehammer. You used my father. Tanner's face darkened, and he moved toward a locked drawer beneath the console, retrieving a worn photo. Ethan's dad in military fatigues, standing beside Tanner. Your father started this program, he said. He believed it could save lives. Control the chaos before it spreads. But then he got cold feet. Thought we were going too far. He tried to shut it down. We told him he could walk away, but you know how that ended. Ethan's knees buckled slightly, fury and disbelief colliding in his chest. You killed him. Tanner didn't flinch. We removed a threat to the mission. Suddenly, lights above flickered and dimmed to red. A low rumble shook the floor beneath them. On one of the monitors, Ethan saw Natalie rushing down a corridor, a security pass in hand, bypassing the guards with the agility of someone who knew the facility better than she ever let on. She wasn't there to help him. She was there to end it. Tanner noticed her too, and slammed his fist on the console. She's going to blow the server. She's going to erase everything. He reached for a sidearm, but Ethan lunged before he could draw. They crashed to the floor in a brutal scramble of fists and rage, years of deception boiling over in a flurry of punches and shouted accusations. Tanner was stronger, trained, but Ethan was desperate, fighting not just for answers, but for every lie he'd ever been fed. As they struggled, a gunshot rang out. Both froze. Tanner's body slumped forward. Natalie stood at the doorway, shaking, the smoking pistol in her hand. I told you, she said, voice trembling. We all have a breaking point. Ethan didn't know whether to run or hug her. But she moved fast, pulling him to his feet and dragging him toward the core server behind a reinforced glass wall. We wipe it now, or it spreads, she warned. They have backups, underground facilities, mirrored drives. But this one is the anchor. This is the original data. Together, they initiated the deletion sequence, the final keystrokes erasing thousands of hours of surveillance, files, and psychological maps. But just as the countdown neared its end, a previously hidden monitor lit up behind them, an old webcam feed showing Ethan as a toddler, playing in a living room. The timestamp was from years before the project was supposed to have started. In the background, clearly visible, was Tanner. And next to him, Ethan's father, alive. Speaking into a microphone. Smiling. Subject reacting as predicted, his father said on the feed. Phase 1 complete. Subject has no idea. The screen went black. The room was eerily quiet after the final deletion, the hum of the servers fading into nothingness. Ethan's mind raced, trying to process what had just happened. The world around him, the life he had known, felt like it was unraveling, the threads of truth and illusion blending together in a dizzying blur. Natalie stood beside him, her face pale and drawn, still holding the gun loosely at her side, her eyes locked on the darkened screen. They'd won. The mission was over. But the cost of it all, his father's involvement, the manipulation, the decades of lies, had left him feeling hollow, as if everything he had once believed was now an illusion, a dream he was waking from far too late. For a moment, he felt a sense of peace, an end to the madness, the betrayal, the constant fear. But it was fleeting. The truth had come at a price. Natalie was already moving toward the exit, her steps slow and deliberate. "I'm sorry, Ethan," she said softly, not looking at him. "For everything. I never wanted this for you." He swallowed hard, his throat tight. "What now?" The words felt foreign, as though they didn't belong in the world he had once known. Natalie paused at the door and turned to him, a fleeting look of uncertainty crossing her face.
"Now?"
"We go our separate ways. There's nothing left here." Her voice cracked, and for a split second, Ethan saw the person she had been before all of this, the person who had been lost in the system as much as he had. She was as broken as he was, but her scars were hidden deeper. "You're free, Ethan," she whispered, and with that, she was gone. Ethan stood alone in the silence, the weight of everything crashing down on him. The world outside had moved on. People still went about their daily lives, unaware of the dangerous games that had been played right under their noses. But he couldn't move on. Not yet. His father's face, so full of promise in that old video, haunted him. What had he really been trying to do? Was his father a hero, trying to prevent something far worse? Or was he just another pawn in this grand experiment, someone who believed he could control what was never meant to be controlled? He stepped away from the terminal, the cold steel of the building pressing against him like a heavy hand. His phone buzzed in his pocket, but he ignored it, not ready to face the next chapter of his life. He wasn't sure there was a next chapter yet, not one that made sense. He needed time, space, to process the fragments of truth and deception that had been shattered in his mind. He looked around the control room once more, the files gone, the evidence erased, but the memories, those would linger forever. As Ethan walked out into the crisp night air, a strange calm settled over him. For the first time in what felt like forever, he didn't feel watched. He didn't feel like a subject or a number. He was just Ethan. But even as he took a step forward into his new life, one thing gnawed at him, a lingering question, a final twist that refused to be silenced. His phone buzzed again. This time, he couldn't ignore it. With trembling hands, he pulled it out and saw a single text message, a number he didn't recognize, and the words, "It's not over. You're still a part of the experiment." The screen went black, and the weight of it all settled on his chest, a cold reminder that no matter how far he ran, the truth he had uncovered might never let him escape.